The lonely cowboy had ridden these hills for so many years that the land felt like an extension of his own body. He knew where the earth softened after rain, where the wind howled loudest at dusk, and where the coyotes cried when night swallowed the sun. People were rare here, and that suited him. Silence never judged him, never asked why he preferred the company of horses to human voices. His past lay buried somewhere behind him, scattered like bones beneath the dust, and he had no desire to dig it up. That evening, the sky burned orange and red as he guided his horse along a narrow trail he had traveled 100 times before. Just as he was about to pass the bend and head toward the valley, something unfamiliar caught his eye. A shape stood where nothing had stood before, or at least nothing alive. An old cabin, long abandoned, leaned against time itself, its wooden ribs exposed, roof sagging like a tired back. And there beside it was a woman. She was wrestling with a warped plank, trying to force it into place with nothing but a hammer and sheer will. Her dress was dusty, her sleeves rolled up, revealing arms marked by small cuts and bruises. Each strike of the hammer echoed through the quiet hills, stubborn and defiant. The cowboy slowed his horse, his breath catching in a way that surprised him. It wasn't just her presence that unsettled him. It was the determination in her movements, as if she were fighting the world one nail at a time. He stayed where he was, half hidden by a cluster of dry bushes, watching. The wind tugged at her hair, loose strands sticking to her face as sweat traced lines through the dirt on her skin. She paused, pressing a hand to the cabin wall, catching her breath. For a brief moment she looked small against the endless land, yet somehow unbreakable. The cowboy felt an old, long-forgotten ache stir in his chest. He told himself to ride on. This wasn't his concern. People came with questions, with stories, with trouble. But his eyes refused to leave her. The cabin looked ready to collapse at any moment, and night was coming fast. Out here darkness wasn't gentle, it was merciless. As the first distant rumble of thunder rolled across the hills, the cowboy tightened his grip on the reins. He didn't yet know what he would do, only that turning away suddenly felt harder than facing whatever waited ahead. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying the sharp scent of rain and ozone across the hills. The cowboy felt it before he heard it, the coming storm announcing itself in low, distant growls. Dark clouds gathered fast, swallowing the last streaks of sunlight. He watched the woman glance up at the sky, her jaw tightening as if she already understood what was coming. She drove another nail into the plank, harder this time, as though sheer force might hold back the weather. A crack of thunder split the air, closer now. That was when the cowboy made his choice. He swung down from his horse and approached her slowly, boots crunching against the gravel. She spun around, startled, raising the hammer like a weapon. For a brief second, they stared at each other, two strangers measuring risk in silence. He lifted his hands, calm and open, his voice low when he finally spoke. "Storm's moving fast. That roof won't hold." She hesitated, eyes searching his face for danger. Then another gust of wind ripped a loose board free, sending it skidding across the ground. Her resistance broke. She lowered the hammer, exhaustion showing through the toughness she wore like armor. Without waiting for permission, the cowboy shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture caught her off guard, and she didn't protest. He went to work with quiet confidence, as if he'd been doing this all his life, which he had. His hands moved with practiced ease, replacing rotten beams, bracing weak joints, tying rope where nails would fail. The woman watched, then joined in, holding board steady, passing tools, their movements slowly falling into rhythm. Rain began to fall, first in scattered drops, then in heavy sheets drumming against the wood and earth. The storm raged, wind howling like a wild animal, but the cabin held. Inside, water seeped through the cracks, yet the roof stayed firm. For a moment they stood close in the dim light, breathing hard, rain-soaked and silent. She looked at him then, not with suspicion, but with something deeper, something close to disbelief. No one had come for her before. No one had helped without asking why she was here or what she wanted in return. Thunder boomed overhead, but inside the cabin there was a strange calm. The cowboy avoided her gaze, focusing on tightening one last knot. He felt the weight of her unspoken questions, and he knew he wouldn't answer them. When the storm finally began to weaken, he stepped back, satisfied the cabin would survive the night. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but he only nodded once, already turning toward the door. What he had done felt necessary. Nothing more, nothing less. And in that moment, the woman understood that some people appear not to stay, but to remind you that kindness still exists even in the harshest places. Morning arrived quietly, as if the land itself were catching its breath after the violence of the storm. Pale sunlight slipped through the gaps in the repaired roof, painting soft lines across the cabin floor. The woman stirred, half expecting to hear the low murmur of another presence, the sound of boots or the creak of leather, but there was only silence. A deep, complete silence that told her the cowboy was gone. She rose slowly, pulling his coat tighter around her shoulders. It still carried his scent, leather, rain, and the open land. For a moment she stood there, unsure of what she felt. Gratitude, yes, but also something heavier. A strange sense of loss for someone she had barely known, yet who had changed the course of her night, perhaps her life. Stepping outside, she found the ground dark and soft, the storm having washed the dust away. The cabin stood straighter now, reinforced and resilient, no longer on the verge of collapse. She traced the repairs with her eyes, recognizing the care in every detail. He hadn't rushed. He had built it to last. Then she saw the tracks. Fresh hoof prints and boot marks led away from the cabin, cutting a clear path toward the hills. She followed them a few steps before stopping. She knew better than to chase ghosts. That was when she noticed something lying near the door, half buried in the damp earth. It was a small wooden horse, carefully carved, smooth from years of handling. She picked it up, turning it over in her palm. The craftsmanship was simple but precise, made by someone who understood patience and solitude. On its underside, faintly etched, was a single mark, a symbol, not a name. It was enough. She smiled, a quiet, private smile. The cowboy had given her more than shelter from a storm. He had given her proof that she wasn't as alone as she had believed. Sometimes help didn't come wrapped in promises or explanations. Sometimes it arrived silently, worked through the night, and left before dawn. As the sun climbed higher, the woman hung his coat inside the cabin, a reminder of the night the world surprised her. She placed the wooden horse on the windowsill where it caught the light. Then she picked up her tools and returned to work, stronger now, steadier. Far off, beyond the rolling hills, a lone rider moved toward the horizon. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The cabin would stand, and so would the woman, and that, he knew, was enough.